Hello, Year 7. This is to help you get ready for your end-of-year reading assessment, which is coming up really soon. You'll cover this in your reading lesson, and I'm making this video for you to watch afterwards to help you revise. Right, let's do this. Okay, so if you're doing this in class, or if you've already done this, you can see what the title was, and you need two handouts. So the first one is So You Think You Buy Healthy Food, and the second one is a little script called Mr. Langley's Lunch. Okay, here are the basics about the assessment. First of all, you're going to sit this with me in a double English lesson. And the reason we'll do it in a double is because it's an hour and 15 minutes. So you get 15 minutes to read the texts and then 60 minutes to answer the questions because there are several different texts to read. So it takes you a bit of time. Now, one of your groups only has single lessons, and so we will just sit those two lessons. So one on one day and then one on the other. Okay, first of all, some superstar secrets for you. To do really well on this, you just need to understand how much you need to write for each question. I don't want some of you to get into the habit of spending too much time on a question that's only worth 1 mark. So 1 mark question is only asking you for 1 word or 1 phrase, perhaps 1 sentence, but just read the question carefully to see what they want. 2 marks means that you need to make a point and then you need to use evidence from the text, so you need a word from the text. 3 marks is where you have point, evidence, and analysis, but again, if you can put that all in 1 sentence, then that's fine. You don't need to write a whole long essay. Now, a 5-mark question, you get credit for whatever you end up writing as long as it's accurate. So if you only write a point, well, you'll get a mark for that. But if you can use 2 bits of evidence with your point and 2 bits of explanation or analysis with that, you might end up with all 5 marks. It's really important that you try to answer every question, even if you're not sure, because if you get it close, then I might just give you a half point. Okay, so now in class you read this article, So You Think You Buy Healthy Food, Fat Chance. You pause the video now so that you can reread it. Right, welcome back. Okay, before we look at some questions, let's talk about the type of questions that you're being asked. AF2 questions are asking you just to select information. So they're asking to see if you can look at a certain paragraph and find a certain word. That's all you have to do. So the question will say something like, give 2 different words that mean this, or give 2 different quotes. So let's look at this example. So you don't need to write down the question, but the little picture of the pen right here shows you that you should write down your answer if you've not already done this in class. So the question is, give 2 reasons why the writer uses the phrase wolf down to describe people eating in paragraph 3. Now look at the question really closely. They want you to only write about the phrase wolf down, and they've put that in italics for you. And they've told you where it is. It's in paragraph 3. So you need to make sure that you're only looking at that paragraph. Okay, so take a minute, pause the video if you want to have a quick look at that. Now, there are several possible answers. Any of these would work. So wolf down might be because people wolf down their food if they're in a hurry, or if they're really hungry, or maybe the size of their mouths. No comments about my mouth, please. Thank you. Or if they're really greedy, or you could say that it's something about animals. Any of those would work. Okay. And again, you didn't need to write any sentences. You just jot it down. The bullet points are next to questions where you don't have to write sentences. Okay, let's try another one. Now this one says, from paragraph 7, why is fat added to foods according to Tim Lang? And that Tim Lang is the author. Give 2 reasons. So again, they're telling you which paragraph to look at and how many reasons you should be giving. So try to answer this one. Okay, so 3 possible reasons. It's cheap, it's plentiful, it makes food softer, or people used to soft food. Now, if you list any other reasons, like for example, fat is added to foods because it tastes good, that's a simple reason. However, he does not say that, so I would not be allowed to give you any credit for that. So make sure you're only giving reasons that are in the paragraph. The next type of questions are the ones where you have to interpret something, you have to infer. And we've been talking about inference all year. So remember, inference is about reading between the lines. So the question will say something like, what does this quotation suggest about? Or which two statements show? Explain one interpretation of. And these are the detective questions. These are where you have to read the text and then explain what you think. That's what inference is, reading between the lines. So here's an example. Now, the part that's in italics is the part from the actual text, and it says, you have also consumed more than 3,300 calories, 800 more than the recommended allowance for a man. Congratulations. You are on your way to joining the rapidly expanding class of Britain's obese. What is the effect of the single word sentence, congratulations? Now, to answer this question, you need to think carefully about the word effect. Effect means, what does it make the reader think about or make the reader feel? So here's some possible answers. Now, first of all, this is only a 1-mark question, so don't spend a lot of time on it. 1 sentence at the most. Now, congratulations is quite ironic because, which means it's saying one thing and meaning another. It's being sarcastic. It's also being quite humorous. So any of those would work for the answer. Now, some questions, AF4 questions, ask you to comment on the structure. So that means looking at how something is laid out, or it looks at the grammar, it looks at the presentation. So it might ask you about captions. If it's an article, it might ask you about why there are a certain number of paragraphs or why one paragraph is longer than another. So it might say, explain one way he organizes his ideas. So for example, maybe the leaflet is organized chronologically from beginning to end. That's something that you could say. Or maybe it's a short story and there's a flashback. So that's something that you could say. Or how does the whole paragraph build tension? And then you could say something about that. So an example of a structure question, this one's focusing on repetition. Now it is 3 marks. It's a short question, but don't forget to look at how many marks it's worth. So because it's 3, that means you need a point, evidence, and explanation. But again, a sentence would do. So the question says, a lot of this food may seem drop dead gorgeous, but it's just drop dead. Again, that's in italics because it comes from the text. Why has Tim Lang used repetition in this sentence? Okay, if you say it's more serious, that will give you 1 mark. If you say the repetition of dead, so that makes his message more serious. Now that's going to earn you 2 marks because if you'll notice, a question doesn't say what's repeated, but you are smart and you have noticed that it's dead that's been repeated. So that's going to earn you an extra mark. And then here's how you get 3 marks. The repetition of dead makes his message more serious because, so here comes the explanation, too much of this good tasting food can result in death. Okay. The next type of question is AF5, and they ask you to comment on language. So language is all about the words of the text. So the question might say, what does the choice of language show, or in what ways does the language show? Explain the choice of language. And language means that you're looking at certain words or maybe at an entire sentence. So here's an example. Again, it's in italics, the part that's from the text. Tim Lang says that people will have to be strong-willed and eagle-eyed to avoid eating fatty foods. Explain these phrases. Again, it's a bullet point, so you know you don't need to write a sentence. It's worth 2 marks. Even if you're not sure, just give it a go. So have a moment and think, what does strong-willed mean? Okay, so hopefully you've figured out that if you're strong-willed, that means that you're quite determined not to do something. And eagle-eyed, think about eagles. They carefully watch out for things. So anything close to that would be able to earn you a mark. Okay, next we're going to read a different type. This time we're going to read a fiction text, which is called Mr. Langley's Lunch. Now, the 5-mark question. Okay. It's really important that you try to answer the 5-mark question. Do not leave this blank, because if you write anything that I can give you credit for, I will give you marks for it. So here's the question. Don't get thrown off because it's a lot of words. It breaks it down for you. The audience sees more of Mr. Langley than the visitors do. Explain how the text is organized to show the audience Mr. Langley's character. Now don't panic, keep reading. You should comment on, aha, how the writer uses the opening stage directions, what Mr. Langley says to the visitors, his reaction to what is in the box. Now let me tell you a little secret. They give you these bullet points here because that's exactly what they want you to write about. And in fact, they are in order of when it appears in the text. So the opening stage directions is the first paragraph. What Mr. Langley says to the visitors is kind of in the middle of the story. His reaction is at the end of the story. Okay? Now it's 5 marks. You'll get 1 mark if you just make a simple comment that's only about 1 bullet point. 2 or 3 marks if you give some details which addresses 2 of the bullet points. And then you can earn 4 or 5 if you give lots of details and address 3 bullet points. But it doesn't have to be a really long answer. Let me show you. Now, Mr. Langley is shown as a confident and happy character. To be honest, you don't even have to put that in. Okay, that's just my point. I'm showing off for you. Now, first bullet point is about stage directions. The stage directions show that he is happy with his life, as it says he is sitting down contentedly. Done. He is polite to the visitors, but is a bit sarcastic when he replies, yes, I like food. Second bullet point, done. Visitors don't understand that he's being ironic. Finally, we see that Mr. Langley is unexcited by the food as he winces as he bites into it. That's the third bullet point. That's going to earn me 5 marks because I've put in the explanation here. The visitors don't understand that he's being ironic. And for each one, I've actually used a direct quote. Okay? But even if you don't do that, you can still earn 3 or 4 marks. So give it a go. And here's one idea. Perhaps when you start answering questions, go to the 5-mark question first and answer that one first so you don't run out of time. Too many students run out of time when they come to the 5-mark question, and then they're just automatically missing out on 5 marks. Okay, on the screen it tells you when your reading assessment is for the different groups. This is for 2016, and also reminds you that this revision video is on YouTube, it's in Student Resources, it's also on Show My Homework. If you don't know how to find our YouTube channel, you just go to YouTube and search for Dietrich, I'm the only one, and there you go. Okay, here are some practice questions for you to do outside of class on your own for your extended learning. This is about Mr. Langley's lunch. What do the stage directions for the boy and girl show about their attitudes to older people? And it even gives you 2 blanks that you have to fill in, so you're just looking for 2 words. Pause this now if you want to give this a go. And here are some of possible answers. Again, if you come anywhere close to this, I will try to give you a mark for it. Another question, this one's on the structure, only worth 1 mark. We have a list of old people who might like food. The boy's speech is in broken sentences. Why is it presented like this? Okay, 1 sentence only, give it a go. Okay, so the boy's speech could be broken because it's realistic. Sometimes that's how teenagers talk. To show that the boy is very uncomfortable. It could be because the boy thinks that Mr. Langley is hard of hearing because he's old. And pauses could also show the boy's hesitation. So as you can see, there's lots of possible interpretations, and I'll give you a mark if you came up with any of those. Okay, one final question, a 3-mark question. So you have a big extract from the text, and then it says, in the stage directions, Mr. Langley unpacks the food box and the food is described. Explain the impressions you get of the food. Refer to words and phrases to support your answers. Now remember, you'll get 1 mark if you have a main point, but you don't have a quote. 2 marks if you make 2 points, or if you have 1 point with an explanation. 3 marks if you have an explanation that has a reference from the text. So if you use a quote from the text, you're going to get an extra mark there. So if you simply say, well, the food is not appealing, which means it doesn't sound good, that'll get you 1 mark. The food is not appealing and seems to be made up of food that people didn't want. Okay, that's a little bit better because you have a point and explanation, so that's 2 marks. And then in this one, I've said the salmon is elderly, and that's from the quote. Banana is speckled, that's also from the text, so that's going to get you 3 marks. Okay, so back to this slide, if you just want to pause and have a look at it. And you can do this, guys. Just revise, take your time, answer all of the questions. Okay, bye. Mic drop.